Well, hello, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. This is Watches Tonight. This evening, I discuss the things I hate about 5 watches I love in honor of Valentine's Day. We chat live, and I share your viewer wrist shots tonight on Watches Tonight. Guys, there's been a lot of, shall we say, current events to discuss. And frankly, a few days ago, the great Chinese spy balloon saga of 2023 burst onto the scene and caused a political firestorm in the United States. Aside from maybe one other occasion, I can't remember the last time so many people were afraid of balloons. That said, while American general attention was diverted to the Super Bowl over the last 48 hours, a bigger threat loomed. A crazy number of generals, like real honest-to-God uniformed generals, started announcing a string of UFO shoot-downs. And it goes on and on and on. It got to the point that at a press conference at the White House, the press secretary had to downplay the possibility of extraterrestrial involvement. But it's becoming clear to anyone who's paying attention, this is a sign that America's struggles with illegal aliens is coming to a head. But watch out, Mars, because as everyone knows, everyone, from movies mostly, that the USA always dunks on extraterrestrials during our own local holidays. Boom! The day we fight back. All right, guys, viewer wrist shots number 1. Well, car A from Louisiana gets us rolling with BMW Motorsports and the IWC tribute to Paul Weber in steel. Looking good. I always love how when you have the car, you also have the model. I've done that too. You can see my Corvette behind the desk here. Richard C. and our own Jason Main celebrate at the Watchbox Boca store event. That's right, we've got a store in Boca Raton. Mark G. of Philly is departing Dublin Airport with the Longa Saxonia, bought from Watchbox. Thank you for trusting our company. Wakar slays us again with his Moser Endeavor flying hours. I had to throw that in again, this time behind the wheel of his BMW M4 Coupe. And Stephen F. and his Rolex Explorer 2 explore Giza in Egypt by Camelback. Guys, keep those wrist shots coming and send them to Watchbox, well, at mondaymailbag@thewatchbox.com. Okay, let's see who's in the box here. We've got Edward Ledden of Sweden, Mac Foster, we've got Enrique Cassiano, Matteo C., Jim Millett, Ron H., we've got Pung Cakery joining in from Bala, I guess one of our local guys, Antelope 1013 from Texas. We got Ken O. from Dublin and Arto Charles along with Boss Defender from Bavaria in Germany, the home of BMW. We've also got Watch Dan Reviews joining in and Jem Hader from Belgium. Guys, thank you so much and thank you for joining me. Turkisher Meister asking, how's it going, Tim? The answer is, it is going well. Aside from the pending alien invasion, everything swell around here at Watchbox. Oh, by the way, guys, if you want, send me your wrist shot at mondaymailbag@thewatchbox.com with your contact information, and I might set you up to receive one of these slick Watchbox knit caps that are responsible for my hair being matted down tonight. All right, jumping back to our regularly scheduled program, visit thewatchbox.com for the latest arrivals. We do have 3,000, actually more, vintage and pre-owned watches live right now, updating by the hour. It's never the same thing twice. And remember, join me on Instagram where you can see many of the exclusive, exotic, and even unlisted watches from the Watchbox inventory. You can also follow events in my world. I'm posting more details of my life at the Watchbox and exciting events in the world of watches so that the Instagram page is becoming a mini Tim Masso news feed as well as a portal for watch shoppers. So follow me there with my bike life, my burgeoning watchmaking, and auto work alongside daily 1-minute watch reviews. Watch Dan from San Diego, we've got Marceau from New Orleans, and Eric Nielsen from Asheville, North Carolina. All right, we got Eric R. saying, Long Unheine Albert greetings. You know how much I love the Albert. I'm a big Albert fan. My grandpa's name too. Okay, so in honor of Valentine's Day, here's why I both love and hate all of my favorite watches. That's right, the late Grumpy Cat, because nothing embodies seething hatred like Grumpy Cat. So, even in a loving relationship, long-term experience proves that there's no such thing as a perfect union. Couples fight, feud, make threats, and then separate at times. If it's meant to be, though, all of this will be overcome. And that's how I'm approaching today's feature, because having received over 10,000 watches for review on YouTube and Instagram, and I've handled even more than 10,000, I have a rare sense of perspective that permits easy assessment of the strengths and weaknesses of any given watch. When I turn a critical eye towards personal favorites, I need to be honest with myself, and I'm still a critic with a withering analytical gaze, but I know that these are watches for which I can forgive any transgression, much as lovers in a relationship will. So here are all the reasons I hate my favorite watches, and why, in each case, my love affair with these imperfectly perfect machines will endure. Okay, we have all sorts of friends joining in. We've got Paul S. from Boca Raton, Joey B., Time Hill, and Robert Dixon of Scotland. We've got Wolfgang from Austria, but he's still in the U.S. right now, and John S. saying, let's talk watches. Indeed, let's talk watches, and let's start with the Rolex Daytona. This is a watch that means so much to me because it was a big part of my formative days as a watch enthusiast. Late in high school, I love race cars. And it was a personal favorite, Pano's, back when they were fighting Porsche in FIA GT in the late 90s. But I love watches as well, and this Daytona is a watch that links the two in a fashion that's both organic and enduring. Of course, the Daytona is the winner's gift at the annual 24 Hours of Daytona sports car race. I fell in love with racing watching the old Speed Vision channel on cable TV here in the US. Rolex, of course, was a major advertiser, and that's actually kind of impressive because Speed Vision was a really niche platform, so they were going straight to the true believers. Advertising works, guys, and here I am 20 years later with the proof. So at 40 millimeters in diameter and just over 12 millimeters thick, wonderfully immune to planned obsolescence, this watch is the Porsche 911 of sporting timepieces, which is to say evergreen, lovely, and always appealing, to the point that you can look at the modern Daytona and the first one from 1963, incidentally the first year of the 911, and you can still see that that first Daytona is visibly related to the one you can buy today. The Daytona has been produced, however, in its current generation since the year 2000, and here's where things start to go south a little bit. Before that, its last complete redesign was 1988. I can't think of any watch model from Rolex or any brand that has gone so long between major redesigns. Rolex has redesigned every single model line at least once since the year 2000. The Daytona's startling aftermarket premiums and dealer wait list are the worst part of the dealer experience, and keep in mind that this is a watch that has been redesigned once during a period when we've had 3 generations of GMT-Master II and 3 generations of Rolex Submariner. And frankly, this is the only case I know of Rolex clearly resting on its laurels and milking success for all it's worth, because this watch should have been redesigned at least once just to keep the faith with the people who are lining up and waiting years for the opportunity to pay retail to own it. So consider how many distinct Sea Dweller models we've had since the year 2000. You can really see what I mean here now with the Daytona. So its price is escalating unreasonably for what you get. In 2016, when the current ceramic bezel steel watch was added, the price of a Daytona was $12,800. Now it's $14,800 for the exact same watch. All the tooling long since paid off. And frankly, the style hasn't changed meaningfully since 1988, and the movement has only seen detail refinements since 2000, which is to say a lot of the old hardware, even from the late 80s and early 2000s, is still being used in the production of this watch. Now, Rolex also controls its own supply chains, so this is not like some small independent being buffeted by the winds of COVID disruptions. Rolex makes the shock protection, they make the lubricants, they make their lube, they make their own alloys, they have their own foundry, they make every part of the watch. So they're not as subject to inflation from suppliers as other brands are, raising further questions about why these price hikes are taking place now. So Rolex is not going to be gouged by suppliers. That said, and I will be fair, if you only account for inflation, $12,400 in 2016 money is over $15,100 in 2023 money. So maybe the Daytona is actually a really good deal. I don't know. But I will say this. The flaw of this watch is the fact that it just does not get a major refresh. despite the fact that it is the most in-demand Rolex model. We've seen new Explorers, Explorer 2s, GMTs, Submariners, Datejusts, all sorts of Cellinis and Sea Dwellers. Every single model, including the Milgauss, has received a new model since the year 2000. Rolex, the ball is in your court, though I still love this watch unconditionally. And you know what? If you get a chance to buy it at retail today, it sure is a bargain. They're still trading at $25,000 to $28,000 pre-owned. So even at $14,800, you can see an up to 100% price premium used. So maybe Rolex knows what it's doing. That's all I'm going to say there. And I still love this watch. In fact, the older they get, the more I love them. As my dream Rolex Daytona is a Sodalite dial 1997 white gold Zenith El Primero powered 16519. And we got Watch You Are here saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We have Thomasina C saying, well, Rolex owns Swatch Group. They make everything for Rolex. I would love to see you kind of delineate that and spell it out, because if that's true, it's news to me. What else is going on? Tom is saying, one can only hope a titanium Daytona with a new colorway would be a great addition to the lineup. And then we have Danny R saying, Rolex basically makes their own money. And so Jim Millett is asking, so is the current Daytona really a 38 millimeter? You can measure it a bunch of different ways and get different sizes, so it's whatever you want it to be. Take a look at it on my wrist in my reviews and you can see how big it is relative to a known quantity. I think that's more important than how they measure the case, because depending on how you measure a Nautilus, it's either a 43 or a 40. So which is it? It's whichever way you measure it. And there is some discretion there in how you do so. Joe Pinto joining in from Louisville. And then we have CLF Hello from NL. And what else is going on in the box? Simon C saying hello Timo. And we got John G joining in from Montana. Abdul from Germany saying a titanium Daytona would be amazing. Nothing is now impossible with Rolex after that bonkers 50 millimeter titanium Sea Dweller. Okay. Patek Philippe, a brand I love, and my favorite model from a brand I love. This is the 5236P. This is probably the single watch that I covet most right now. I've been obsessed with this reference since it debuted in 2021. The dial in particular kills me because you've got the satin grain like stainless steel, you've got the smoked or fumé fade from light to dark. You've got an inline American style calendar and perfect dial balance. Split it down the middle and it's a perfectly balanced bilateral symmetry. The movement combines both finish and architecture. Finish is how parts are decorated. Architecture is the size, shape, and arrangement of the parts relative to each other. This movement has both. The angular case is a wonderful homage to the vintage reference 3448 and 3450 perpetual calendars. And if I were to drop $140,000 on a watch today, you are looking at that one. No mysteries here. So I love it, but here's what I hate about it. Okay, first, Patek classes this watch as a grand complication, which we know, as we observed in last week's episode, is a huge exaggeration. Only one watch in that collection really qualifies, and that's the 5208. A grand complication traditionally is bare minimum a chronograph with a perpetual calendar and a minute repeater, and all we've got with the 5236P is a perpetual calendar. Second, despite the patented dual coaxial and coplanar calendar discs, the complication module is neither integrated into the base movement nor ambitious in its design. And stay with me for a moment here, because yes, it is multiply patented and it is a relatively new thing for Patek Philippe. They've done it before in pocket watches, but never wrist watches. So the calendar is controlled by case flank correctors that require the use of a separate tool. Each display on the calendar has its own corrector, and you have a little tool that you're supposed to use to make these corrections. No part of the calendar can be set through the crown. The calendar can also not be set backwards. We'll talk about why that's a big issue in a moment, because many others can be. And it's also not a new thing on the scene. Also, the ancient grand lever and wheel perpetual calendar system used in this watch would have been familiar to Henri Stern in the 1940s and 1950s. We're now 2 generations removed from Henri, but this system endures. This is a very old-fashioned way of making a perpetual calendar. It's very fragile. It's very piecemeal because you have to have separate pushers for every indication, and it takes up a lot of space. It is the opposite of innovation. And again, we are now several generations removed from people who would have in their day regarded that as an old school pocket watch trick for building a perpetual calendar. So Ulysse Nardin's perpetual calendar has been bidirectionally settable with a single point of adjustment through the crown since the first perpetual Ludwig in 1996. IWC's Kurt Klaus perpetual calendar system has been settable through the crown and mechanically programmed to combine the right calendar elements in the right combination, even the moon phase, since 1985. Setting a 1985 Kurt Klaus perpetual calendar is as simple as setting the date on a Rolex Datejust. And F.P. Journe's perpetual calendar can be set without any tools or accessories. All you need is your fingernail, which is to say, well, Patek Philippe's system is behind the times. They're not giving any discounts for that. Moreover, the movement in this Patek, though beautiful, only has a 48-hour power reserve, which seems a little weak for a watch that has a cumbersome setting and complex calendar system. If you let this stop for a day or two, you've got a lot of work to do with that pusher adjuster, and you better hope that it isn't buried somewhere in the attic. And don't be tempted to use a pen, because if Patek Philippe finds ballpoint pen ink on your pusher correctors, they just might charge you more for a service down the line. So, the Patek 5236P has other flaws, namely the size. It's an absolute brick. At 41.3 millimeters in platinum, if that doesn't sound huge to you, you need to try it on. Those lugs seem to add 2 millimeters to the case. Think of it as a 43 plus, and you begin to get the sense of just how large this watch wears. For a dress watch, it's a monster. And at $140,000, the primary appeal of the watch ultimately is the way it looks, not necessarily groundbreaking technology. All of that said, I would shove my 140 grand into Terry Stern's hands if I were in a position to do so, because my eagerness to forgive this watch is rivaled only by Hollywood's readiness to forgive the next Mel Gibson blow-up, which is to say, quite a bit. All right, jumping into our chat box, we got a question from Geezer. Tim, what are your thoughts on the 5212A? I like it, although that watch has gone from being a bit of a curiosity in the catalog to one of the most waitlisted models. That is the weekly calendar Calatrava in steel, guys, for those of you not keeping track of the reference numbers. We got Matthew D saying, hello, Mr. Masso from Denver, Colorado. My sister lives out there. Hello there. And we have Greg I. Good evening, everyone. Glad to catch the show live. We have Wolfgang saying, I love Critical Tim, with the crying, tilted, laughing emoji. And Jim Millett saying, I'm good. I hope things are okay with you, Dylan Lamb. And Dylan Lamb is one of our longtime supporters. Simon T in the box, and Rich Buddy saying, I prefer the 5320 over this. Okay, jumping back into our regularly scheduled program with Wrist Shots number 2. I asked, you answered. Here we go with Jack. Jack lives large with a mid-size Patek Philippe Nautilus 3800/1A diamond dial. We've got Samard M and his Rolex GMT-Master II enjoying a Montreal Winter by Land Rover Defender. I guess I probably mispronounced that. His name is probably Samar M. And then we have Saul C and his MB&F Mad 1 Red getting racy with his Lexus RCF. Andrew K and his JLC Master Ultra Thin Moon roll down the roof in his Mazda Miata. Anthony of California kicks back with a latte. I'm seeing double your pleasure with his Hermes Arceau Temp Suspendu. Guys, send your wrist shots to mondaymailbag@thewatchbox.com, and if you do, include your Instagram handle so I can tag you. All right, what else is going on in the box here? We got a question about what I think of the Breguet Classique from Victor. I think the Classique models are incredible, unbelievable values to be had in perpetual calendars, tourbillon, even repeating timepieces, and frankly, the in-house capability they have, engineering and finishing, guilloche, marquetry, miniature painting, craft arts. It is as good as anything at Patek Philippe, Audemars Piguet, or Lange. I think they're underrated because Swatch Group mismanages the brand. They're not well advertised, and I think there's an unfair prejudice against the Breguet brand because the modern brand has nothing to do with Breguet. As I've said before, it's been a long time since a Patek or Philippe has made anything at that brand, and I don't think we've ever held that against the House of Stern. All right, we've got Edward Ledden in the box. Greetings, Simon T. and Caliber YQG saying he loves that Hermes. Crazy Watch is joining us from the Benelux countries in Luxembourg. And we've got Jason P. saying, I'd lose so much time to the Mad One. All right, what else is going on? We got CEK joining, saying, gents, CEK, good to see you, my man. So more watches I love but also hate. So some things are so ugly that we find them intriguing and irresistible, like bulldog puppies. That is exactly how I feel about the de Bethune DBD. Launched in 2006, the DB Digital was an evolution of the prior DBS model, but the DBD featured a lot of things I love, such as a 6-day power reserve, an inline calendar, jumping hours, and a case-back spherical moon phase that airs only once every 1,112 years. The DBD dial includes dial-side Côte de Genève, a pendant-like shape, half-hinged lugs, and reasonably good small wrist fit to make it most wearable of the digital time de Bethunes on my wrist. And if de Bethune is my favorite brand, the DBD is my favorite de Bethune. That should tell you something about how strongly I feel about this watch. Well, what's not to love about this watch? Well, let's start with Rarity. The DBD was made in only 39 copies, of which a mere 17 were the white gold variant that I actually want, because I could never wear rose gold even with this watch. It's just too flamboyant for me. So 17 of these are floating around, and I would be lucky to get my hands on even one of them. I hate that Rarity. As great as it is to own, if you don't have access, you hate the Rarity. Now, happiness is being a Rolex fan, because almost everything the company has made has been made by the millions. Prices may vary, but purchase opportunities are frequent. Then there's the DBD's market price, which is approaching $200,000 when even the moderately more available rose gold model comes to market. That's out of my price range. In spite of the price premium, the DBD is only a complex calendar. You see that inline calendar, and superficially it looks like the Patek we just saw. It's not actually a perpetual or even an annual. It's a simple 5-time-a-year correction complex calendar. I know simple and complex sound contradictory, but this is a complex calendar that needs to be adjusted manually 5 times a year. I would think for the price that this sold for, even new, that could have been at least an annual calendar. Now, how about that dial? It's not the most efficient use of space, is it? This is probably the lowest area to utilization of any modern watch dial, and it's fair to call the watch somewhat barren. Patek did a much better job packaging its moon phase inline calendar and time display right here. Bonus points for the balance side to side and top to bottom. And then there's the look, because the DBD really has been called, justifiably, everything from a bathroom scale to a tombstone. And this watch definitely looks like the latter. That's a fair comparison, especially with the gray Côte de Genève variant, which probably explains why it sold so poorly when it was new. But like those ugly bulldog puppies, the DBD is something I love more for its distinctive appearance, not less. Sometimes true love is blind of necessity. Jumping back into the box, Danny Rubin joining in, saying that's a great looking watch. Dylan Lamb saying Gucci makes one that looks like that. I'll have to check that out and see, because it's not ringing a bell with me. Wolfgang saying ugliest watch ever, Moser crypto thing. Ah yes, the Genesis. Sometimes Edouard Mélin does things deliberately to be provocative. Consider that he may think it's as ugly as you do and be perfectly satisfied with that public reaction. Time Hill saying, I love the DBD. John Goodman saying, Breguet Classique Perpetual Calendar. With retrograde seconds for me, and I'm done. I think that's the 3787 reference. What else is going on in the box? Guys, stay with me. Let's chat live and raise this, see if we can get 300 concurrent views. And then Soma R saying, it looks like Winnie the Pooh with those lugs. And Mason 1 saying, good evening. Watch Peeps from the UK. New Moser Heritage Center seconds on the wrist. We need to do like a Moser episode soon, because I really like the brand, and I know we've got a lot of fans here as well as on my Facebook group. Simon T saying, Platinum Date 2023 with Meteorite Dial, a great watch or the greatest watch? Well, I just showed you my idea of the greatest watch, so I would say a great watch. We got Pun Cakery asking, do you have any Mosers you hate, ones you love? Well, I think the Genesis and the Swiss Icons watch are both extremely divisive. I can't see myself wearing either of those. And I would also argue that the Pioneer in precious metal is just too big for a precious metal watch. And other than that, I can't really fault them because I love them so much. The Endeavour Flying Seconds can be difficult to read until you get a handle on it. And I would also say Moser should have an automatic perpetual calendar option because frankly, perpetual calendars, even theirs, tend to need a lot of corrections if the watch stops. And it's always easy to just put a watch on in the morning and know that it's going to keep both the time and the calendar. Patek Philippe has known since the 1960s that when you offer a perpetual calendar, it's a good thing to at least offer an automatic winding option. Mark K, do you feel like you've reached a place where you have a cap on dollars spent on a single watch since you've seen them all at all price points? No, but the higher the price, the more I have to love the watch and the more special it has to be. Do I think Ferdinand Berthoud is worth $250,000? Yes. It's one of the few times I've seen a watch priced at that level and started wondering what would happen if I did cash in all of the chips just for the pleasure of wearing it. So if the watch is special enough, yes, there is no upper limit, or I should say no, there is no upper limit. But the bottom line is that the watch has to be commensurate in specialness to the price, which is a very fey and intangible thing because we all have our favorites. And then what else is going on right here? We've got a Mick in Florida joining in. We've got Taytron, thoughts of the Tonda PF GMT Rattrapant. Cool, just be ready to take a bath if you buy it new. And then we've got Matt Forster saying the FB03 is awesome, and I agree with that, from Ferdinand Berthoud, best in the industry watch finish. We got Hunter 962 Larry. Hello from the Treasure Coast of Florida. Is 962 a reference to the great Porsche GTP? Let me know. Are you referencing the Group C racing car or something else right there? Jumping back to the program, we've got to talk about wrist shots because you guys spoil me. Dr. Luis and his blazing Rolex Daytona enjoy a brew to pass the time. Roy S. and his Omega Seamaster Bullhead chronograph and Hausen the puppy kick back at home. We've got Jeff R. of Dallas, Texas, styling with the legendary yellow gold green dial Rolex Daytona. We've got Peter B., who overpowers with the 12,000 meter water resistant Kaventsmann Evo Hadal 2 German-made diver. My God, that's not just a watch, that's a weapon, and an impressive collection of previous Super Bowl tickets. We've got Ben S. and wife celebrating Valentine's Day with a double shot in Cancun, Mexico. Well done, guys. Tough to get a background and a foreground at the same time. That's probably our best pure photography video of the night. Okay, guys, let's see what's going on in the box. Thomas Burnett responding to one of our viewers saying, loving that Omega Bullhead. And then we've got Hunter 962 Larry saying, no, 962 is my Navy military class number. I was 1909 in OCS. What else is going on? Arturo S. saying, I'm thinking of buying the Breitling Top Time, but is it worth it? Get it used. Breitling resale value, even in the Georges Kern era, has not stiffened up. They still cost a whole lot less, even 1 year out of the boutique. And you're going to use that to your advantage because whether you go with the 2-year warranty or the 5-year warranty, buying a 1-year-old Breitling watch means you still get some factory protection. We've got BK joining in from the morning in Hong Kong, getting up early with us, and I appreciate that. We've got John Goodman saying, should do a show around the armory again. The task jacket suits you. Maybe something around how watches and attire are going together or not in a post-pandemic world. Interesting idea. I've spoken to Mark. We're talking about putting something new together, so pending. We will definitely have another Mark Cho feature. And then Sean P. saying, Breitling pricing. I'm a diehard Navitimer fan, but the recent prices are nutty, and I have to agree with you on that. Breitling prices are just too high. George Kern is doing with Breitling prices what he previously did with IWC prices. Okay, here are some watches that I love-hate at the same time. So more in our theme, the Blancpain 50 Fathoms. Launched in 1953 alongside the Rolex Submariner, the 50 Fathoms was one of the two models that launched the modern dive watch genre. Today, the 50 Fathoms is the face of the Blancpain brand. It combines real history with the gorgeous caliber 1315 movement, which has phenomenal overall finish, just as the watch has phenomenal overall finish, and opulent details that equally put to shame Audemars Piguet and Rolex dive watches. This 50 Fathoms competes against both. There's shock resistance, magnetic resistance, a 5-day power reserve, meticulous finish, awesome lume, and a charismatic sapphire-capped bezel. While Rolex has hardly touched its Daytona since the 2000s, there's nothing overt about that watch, the Daytona, that screams decade from hell. But the Blancpain 50 Fathoms certainly does. This is a watch from the bigger is better era of the 2000s. As appealing as the caliber 1315 is, I should add that in addition to the size of this watch, it's not a very revealing watch because you can't see the movement on most steel versions of the 5015, which is the core 50 Fathoms reference. Those generally include a solid caseback, which is self-defeating when you've got a great-looking movement to show off. The bulk of this watch at 45 millimeters is undeniable. It's also way polished, which makes it a little bit too big bling for a lot of folks who appreciate its history otherwise. And though its history is as long and distinguished as Rolex, the sheer size of this circa 2007 50 Fathoms means that it will never be directly comparable to or competitive with the Rolex in the marketplace. Fit is tight because of the size, especially on the bracelet, which swells the watch even more. I can barely wear it despite adoring its story, assembly quality, and superb mechanics. And for all the talk of the Blancpain X71 bracelet's superior fit, feel, and integrity, it lacks any kind of dive extension, which is a huge miss on a diving watch. Even a $3,500 Oris Aquis gives you at least a dive extension fold-out. Rolex and Omega include highly adjustable variable extension clasps on their divers, and all of those are priced below the Blancpain. Even the Tudor Pelagos, a $4,600 diver from the junior Rolex brand, includes multiple degrees of adjustment in its diving clasp, plus a free accessory strap, which frankly every bracelet-clad diver should also include. Help is on the horizon, however, since a new 70th anniversary 50 Fathoms is riding to the rescue with a 42.3mm case and a display caseback. Add a smaller case, blocks of lume for numerals, we can go back to that anniversary photo, and keep all of the best features of the previous watch, like the movement and the sapphire cap on the bezel. It's a limited edition for now, but expect a regular production version soon without the commemorative dial text. We got Neo joining in. We've got Deech 2086 saying that the new watch is probably too thick. We've got Geezer saying, I just wish they did more 50 Fathoms in 40mm without the case engraving. And we've got Rob K asking, what's an ideal choice for a small wrist 14 centimeters? Well, I would say a 13.9mm Planet Ocean, especially in lightweight ceramic. I would say the previous 40mm Rolex Submariner. Even better, a 5-digit on a hollow end-link bracelet. I would say the Blancpain 50 Fathoms in the 5008 reference case, which is a 40.3, and a Tudor Black Bay 58 on a strap. Those would be my recommendations to you. And we have a Mick in Florida saying, I love that limited edition 50 Fathoms. We've got Rob K, greetings from Toronto, and We have Truman B saying, had a bathyscaphe, but sold it regretting it. Maybe getting a titanium 50 fathoms with a sapphire caseback. Get the blue dial sapphire caseback 50. That is a winning proposition. We got Jim Mellett asking, what is the main competition to the 50 fathoms? At its price point, being made in the Vallée du Jeu, a few kilometers away from Audemars Piguet, I would say that the 50 fathoms most natural rival would be either a two-tone Rolex Sea Dweller or a Royal Oak offshore diver. Those would be its natural rivals. The AP is both a neighbor and a rival in class. Dave Opencar recommending a Zinn U50 diver to our friend looking for a smaller dive watch, and I will second that. Okay. Viewers chats number 4. Muhammad E of Kenya and Seiko get too close for comfort with cheetahs at Mount Kenya Park. Ben D of Colorado digs out his Honda Odyssey with the Aragon M50 diver. We've got Bogdan I navigates traffic with his Tudor Black Bay 58 Blue and Mercedes C200 AMG line. Used B, Burning Mr. B on Instagram, brings us a rare D. Dornbluth sighting in the wild. Kate B stands up for our lady watch collectors with her Cartier Santos Galbe while playing oboe with the symphony. Very cool. Guys, send your wrist shots to mondaymailbag@thewatchbox.com to see your wrist on my list. Audemars Piguet is probably the brand I love-hate the most of any. Aside from Patek Philippe, there's no watch brand besides AP, frankly, that I hold to higher standards of innovation, quality, and respect for its own history. So if I have friction with AP, it's not because I diss the brand or have low expectations, it's because I have sky-high expectations based on where they've been and what they've done and knowing what their capabilities are when they put their mind to it. I love the 1991 Audemars Piguet Star Wheel with a white-hot passion. It was innovative, fine, beautiful, poetic, and exactly the kind of watch that made AP part of the Swiss Holy Trinity long before Le Brassus was cranking out octagonal sports watches. And I was an early proponent of the Code 1159 dress watch, despite its slow start with watch enthusiasts back in 2019. I also love aventurine glass. So it should come as no shock that I adore the 2022 and still red-hot Code 1159 Star Wheel, picking up where the original left off in 1991 and adding the agreeable aventurine dial detail of the Code 1159 perpetual calendar. Also, this is Wandering Hours, an aventurine dial, an actual dress watch design win for AP, and not too thick at 10.7 millimeters thick. At $57,900, or I should say $57,900, it isn't even the kind of cash gouge we've come to expect from hot new AP watch releases. The coaxial center seconds is a new twist on these star wheels, and the dial side carousel for the satellite hours is finished in gorgeous fashion. When you get close, you see that the dial side carousel is the part of the movement that is best finished on this watch with actual manual detail on the part they know that you and your friends are going to be seeing most often. So what's not to love? Unfortunately, lots. Let's start with the size. At 41 millimeters, this doesn't sound like it's going to be a huge watch, but the 50 millimeter lug-to-lug span makes every basic Code model wear like a 43 millimeter watch. It feels huge for a dress watch. Everyone I know who tries a Code for the first time remarks that the case is more beautiful than they expected with its hollows and sculpting and details, thinner than they expected from top to bottom, and more appealing in person than in photos. Without exception, though, they also comment negatively on the size and proportions of the lugs, which almost everyone equates with a sports watch. But at 30 meters water-resistant max, less for some models, this is no sports watch. It's too big to be AP's dress watch, AP's successor to the Jules Audemars, and the successor to the great mid-century dress watches that made AP Holy Trinity long before the Royal Oak. Second, there's that price. Okay, $57,900, not bad for a complicated precious metal Audemars Piguet. But AP announced last year that it would become the first major luxury watch brand to allow its own stores to apply market adjustments to the company's suggested retail price. Your guess is as good as mine. Guys, do you have a deposit in for one of these? What are they quoting you out of the AP House or AP Boutique? Finally, the delicate fashion of the dial's execution doesn't carry over to the reverse of the case. The caliber 4309 has decent tech specs with a 3-day power reserve, shock resistance, automatic winding, and a hacking function. But the largely mechanical execution is both obvious and comparable to brands like JLC, Zenith, Glasuta Original, and maybe Moser that you typically don't equate with AP as a peer. It's not Vacheron Longa or Patek finishing, it's not even FP Journe level finishing, and Journe watches are mostly mass-produced. Even upstart independents like Laurent Ferrier, Moritz Grossman, and Chapek do a better job sweating the details of movement finish and making their own roughly $60,000 watches look truly handmade on the inside. With its resources, AP should do better. It's not too late, guys, but it needs to start soon. Blancpain's 1315 movement that we saw before is finished better on a dive watch that costs less than 1/3 of what the Code Star Wheel costs new. Again, these companies, Blancpain and Audemars Piguet, are very close neighbors. There's a rivalry there, and there are no secrets between them. Which is to say, the reverse of the Code 1159 looks like every other watch with the 4300 automatic base. It should look like the movement inside the 50 fathoms. Blancpain's 16-year-old caliber 1315 had 5 days of power reserve back in 2007. Today, the Star Wheel's 4309 has only 3 days. And somehow the older movement also has superior finish, despite mostly being used to power a $15,300 diving watch that's made of steel. All of the watches, guys, let's be realistic, that I featured today on the show are profoundly flawed. I feel about these watches exactly how I feel about my other purely emotional life commitment, which is autos. That's my old D2 Generation S8, into which I poured a ridiculous amount of cash. I've blown irrational money on both cars and watches in my day, and I do it again to connect with what I love and the people who feel likewise. There's no rational way to explain why a person, myself included, should pursue car experiences and watch collection instead of prudently saving for old age, investing in mutual funds and ETFs, inflation-protected T-bills, and houses that are frankly a good investment, but which I have no interest in owning. But I always come back to cars and watches, because that really is where my heart and my passion and my ardor lies eternally. And passion is not a rational emotion. Just as importantly, it's not an optional emotion. It is essential, sine qua non, can't do without. Like candy hearts, the watches on today's show have profound flaws. But I can't stop eating them up. Guys, happy Valentine's Day. From my family to yours. Join me on Instagram, by the way, where you can see many of the most exclusive, exotic, and sometimes unlisted Watchbox watches. Check out watches not featured on our website and follow the daily livings of Tim Masso and the video crew here at Watchbox. Time out, Tim out, Sean out. Thanks for logging on.